On October 24th, 1890, at around 3:30 p.m., John Lewis was returning home from a long day of work. He was a butcher, and happy to get off at a fairly decent time. Most days the 64-year-old worked up to 16 hours a day, slicing and cutting meat. He removes his jacket and makes his way to the kitchen and pours himself a nice pint. His wife Martha, a housemaid, wouldn't be home for a few hours. Lewis didn't mind though. He had the house to himself and could enjoy a nice drink or three without any worry of being told otherwise. And that's exactly what he did. However, at 4 p.m., he heard a noise that he knew all too well. Being a butcher, Lewis recognized the animalistic screams of something being slaughtered. He hops up and looks out the window, trying to find out where the noise came from. However, as he looks, he can't pinpoint where it is. And after a few moments, he convinces himself that it was the drink's fault, and there was no real noise to begin with. He chuckles and takes another gulp of his drink. However, as he does, he hears it again. But this time the screams sound different. They seem to be that of an infant. Lewis is tough and has seen the worst humanity has to offer. But those cries of that baby makes his blood run cold. Lewis prays to himself that the child will be okay. Unfortunately, his pleas were not answered, as Lewis just heard the gruesome murder of Phoebe Hogg and her 18-month-old baby. Hello, my name is Joseph Palmer, and today I wanted to talk about the murder of Phoebe Hogg and her 18-month-old baby, also named Phoebe, at the hands of Mary Pearcy, also known as Joe the Ripper. Now, discretion is advised. I will be discussing the murder in some detail, so please keep that in mind. Now, without further ado, let's dive into the infamous case. Mary Eleanor Wheeler was born in 1866. In her early years, she had a rather normal 19th century life. At least so much so that nothing seems out of the ordinary, at least in her early years. However, that soon changed. Now, here is where we hit our first snag in Piercy's life. It is stated that her father, Thomas Wheeler, was convicted of murder and hanged for killing a man named Edward Anstey. However, author Sarah Beth, who studied the crime and Mary's life, stated she could not find any evidence between the two people, and also found a retraction of the newspaper article in which the information was printed. There is another story that her father's name was actually James Wheeler, and in 1882, died in an accident suffered at work. Either way, one of these events would have most likely traumatized the child, and could have led to her drinking, and at least 2 suicide attempts. And although she suffered from her fair share of demons, at the age of 19, she was able to find her first love. Mary was considered quite attractive, described as being 5 feet 6 inches tall, with lovely russet hair and fine blue eyes. She was of normal build and had nice shapely hands, and used these features to attract a carpenter named James Piercy. They were together for a good deal of time, but Mary's cheating caused the two to go their separate ways. Mary must have really cared for James, because even after they split up, she continued to use his last name. She wasn't on the market for long, and soon met a man by the name of Charles Crichton. Charles, like most men, took an immediate liking to Mary, so much so that he rented a room for her at 2 Priory Street in North London. The two would meet once a week. With 6 other days free, Mary had other men keep her company, including a man by the name of Frank Samuel Hogg. He was a furniture remover, impressing Mary with his wit and having printed business cards. Mary would light a candle at her window to let Frank know when she was available to meet. They must have gotten along rather well, as Frank even had his own key. Their lives seemed to be going rather well, and they grew closer and closer together. However, there was one thing keeping them from being together forever. No, not Charles, who paid for Mary's room and took care of her financial needs. It was something else. You see, Frank was married and even had a daughter. Of course, divorce wasn't a great option, considering how it was viewed in the 19th century. And one night, after a few too many drinks, Mary had an idea. Frank couldn't divorce his wife. But what if something happened to the woman and her infant baby? With them out of the picture, they could be together forever. And Mary had the perfect plan to achieve this. On the morning of October 24th, 1890, Mary decided to put her plan into motion. She asked a young man by the name of Willie Holmes to run an errand for her. She paid him a penny to hand a note to Frank's wife. The note was inviting her to tea that very afternoon. Phoebe wasn't suspicious at all, as she had no idea about the affair. She happily accepted and made the trip with her 18-month-old baby. A few hours later, at around 7 o'clock, a man was returning home from work. When he walked down Crossfield Road, he saw what looked like a body. When he got closer, he realized he was correct and ran to tell police. When officers arrived, they saw that the woman's head was wrapped in a cardigan. Once it was removed, the officers became ill. The woman's face was beaten and covered in blood. Her throat was cut so deep, she was nearly decapitated. The police took the body to the Hampstead police station, where the full injuries came to light. The body had a fractured skull and bruising on her head and arms. There was also defensive wounds, signaling whoever this woman was, she truly fought for her life. There was not a lot of blood in the surrounding area, which indicated the murder took place elsewhere. Later that evening, a constable on the beat discovered a blood-stained pram in Hamilton Terrace, about a mile from where the woman's body was found. A day later, the body of a baby was found. Upon further examination, it was determined she died of suffocation. Officers were both grief-stricken and furious about what they found, and did everything they could to track down the monster or monsters that possibly could have done this, and got the word out, asking for any information on who these two were. Back at Frank's home, he began to worry. His wife and daughter had not been home for a few days. Frank became even more worried when he heard about the gruesome murder in the Saturday evening paper. Frank's sister Clara decided to go to the police station, and see if she could identify the body. However, before she could go, Frank had a weird feeling that Mary may know something about what happened to his wife, so he sent Clara over to Mary's to see what she knew. Mary, of course, denied seeing Phoebe, but strangely enough, offered to come to the station and help identify the body. But the strange thing was, when the two got there, Mary began to act strange, yelling and screaming once the extent of the woman's injuries were told to them, seemingly trying to prevent Clara from confirming who the body was. Thankfully, it didn't work, and the police now had the names of the two victims. Officers decided to take the two women to the pram where the blood was found, and what they believed was used to transport the bodies. Clara's blood ran cold when she saw it. Of course, it belonged to Phoebe. With her strange behavior that day, police couldn't help but wonder about Mary. So on a hunch, they decided to interview neighbors to see if anything was out of the ordinary that day. The first few houses were unsuccessful. However, finally when they knocked on the door of Charlotte Prittington, they found out the horrifying truth, and what truly happened, and the gruesome crimes of Mary Pearcy were revealed. Thank you so much for viewing part 1. I didn't want to make this video too long, so it will be split up into 2 parts. Next time we'll dive into what happened that fateful day, and the investigation that transpired.